Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and we want to talk about the full moon that's coming up. It's kind of a doozy. It's got a triple conjunction of Sun, Chiron, and Venus, which are all at the same degree. So that's a pretty intense configuration. And what we want to do with this is, we want to explore a little bit what that might mean individually and collectively for everybody, and also use this to explore to some extent the principles of astrology, which is what we're also about. Just trying to, spread the word. Astrology actually works, as crazy as that is. I like to say that there's two truths in this field. That astrology works, absolutely works, can be demonstrated to work, and yet also cannot possibly work according to the prevailing science, what we know, what's accepted about the universe, about the world that we live in, about the laws of physics, etc. Even with the quantum revolution, where we've understood that physics really implies a much deeper and more mystical, really, connection between events and things in the world, that really hasn't caught up to the prevailing consensus thinking. We're still living in basically a 19th century view of the world, which is changing, but it is changing slowly. And I think one of the big keystones for that societal change that needs to happen in this 21st century is the understanding that astrology works, that there is a mystical side to things, that the universe is not as simple as science, pure science would like to think, that there's other dimensions of existence, other vibes and ways we can connect to each other, the way animals can connect to us psychically, and the way the stars and the planets align with us here on Earth. The phrase is "as above, so below," as revealed in the heavens with symbolism, so with the affairs of Earth. Although, of course, it's not strict and very predictable. It's a complex interleaving of some symbolism that we really are dealing with. And it manifests in a number of different ways. The archetypes, the astrological archetypes in modern Western humanistic astrology have, to a great extent, a richness to them and a multiplicity of meanings to them, so that it's not a simple, straightforward cause and effect type of relationship, but rather a symbolic link between synchronistic events, synchronistic moments of timing, like this full moon that's coming up on Sunday, and affairs here on Earth. And we can see the links, and it's very clear how the symbolism helps us to understand what we're up to and what's going on, but also how it opens up the whole idea that we have a much broader and deeper connection to spirit and to a multiverse, a multi-universe that we really inhabit. There's other dimensions of reality pretty much escape us. There's dimensions within ourselves that we're not always aware of. And it's good to be able to tune into the outline of these things, to be able to sense what is really going on at deeper levels within us. And it leads to a lot more compassion and understanding of who we are and who others are and how others are coming up against us and what all's going on there. So without further ado, let's go look at the chart. So I'm going to do the share screen. And here we are. You should be able to see the screen with the full moon displayed. We're using the natural houses. We're using Aries of the first house cusp, and then Taurus, and so on all around the signs. And the actual rising is revealed in the TimePassages software by this little symbol here, which shows a little stylized rising sign, and this symbol here is the stylized midheaven. So actually, 5 degrees of Cancer will be rising at this timing, which is given in PST as 10:48 a.m. It's actually daylight time. It's 11:48. But this is the full moon, as you can see by the timing, by the degrees and minutes. The sun is 8 degrees, 18 minutes. The moon is 8 degrees, 18 minutes of Libra. And what's so fascinating about this full moon is look at this 8 degree. We talk about a partile conjunction between two planets when they're the same degree is the most powerful, obviously. And the symbolism of the degree is also important. In other words, going over the degree boundary, it does make a difference. There's a term for it in astrology. It's called partile. So the partile conjunction between Sun and Chiron is matched by the partile conjunction between Chiron and Venus as well. So all three at the same degree, very unusual. And of course, the moon at the same degree by the nature of the fact that it's the full moon moment. And then we have also quite close Maki, which we can talk about as we go through. So what does this tell us? That we have this strong constellation of planets, including Chiron, including Venus. And one thing that we might immediately think of is natural rulership that Venus has, the sign of Libra, which is opposite the Aries sun at this time, which we had the equinox just recently. And so it could be relationship wounding. I mean, that's one way to look at this. And I think in any case, it is a very intense configuration, which will likely lead to some intense experiences over the weekend, especially on Sunday. It's around the middle of the day on Sunday in the West Coast. It's 3 p.m. in the East Coast. And points, it'll be in the evening, of course, in Europe. But the point being that this is a pretty intense weekend. And I think it's likely that inner wounding could come up. Chiron is very active in astrology charts and in personal charts. And I think also in transit charts such as this. So the recipe for inner wounding to come up is to try to look into it. I have a friend that says, you're never angry for the reason that you think you are. Namely, that we have our own internal kettle that's boiling away and we don't really know all the ins and outs of that. But we might find that we get triggered in a situation and anger comes up. And the easy thing to do, the superficial thing to do, maybe the incorrect thing to do, is to assume that you're angry because this person is making you angry. This person took your parking spot. You're upset about it. But it gets into, these deeper issues of, is there a way that you were upset as a child at not having your own space, that somebody overrode your boundaries, and so that's a button for you. Some people it might not be. So, if you can look inside yourself and kind of try to suspect, they say count to 10, right? Well, during that counting to 10, what you really need to do is take a few deep breaths, calm yourself, look inside and say, what is going on? Is there a way that I can take responsibility? Is there a way that I can recognize that I am 100% personally responsible for my own anger? Not an easy thing. Not an easy thing. And similarly, when we see Chiron with Venus in the natal chart, it usually does imply wounding in a peer-to-peer situation from early childhood that was you're not accepted, you're a bit too odd in a certain way to be accepted in a superficial way by your school friends. And of course, at that age, it's very wounding. You want to be accepted, you want to be loved. You think it's terrible when somebody dislikes you. And so, or seems to. And so we have all these inner things that can easily get triggered at this time. And once again, if there is a relationship issue that comes up, and if maybe you can see a pattern of continual relationship issues that do come up, guess what? That's a real opportunity. They say in Buddhism to take the difficulties that come across your path as your greatest teachers. And it's true. There's a way that you can rise to the occasion. Figuring ground reversal is the glass actually half full. And, you just take it as an opportunity. Take it as, really it all boils down to, I believe, having faith in the universe to support you. In other words, why are we here? What's going on? Are we just bumping into each other in random ways and whoever dies with the most toys wins? Well, I don't think that's the way it is. I think that we do have a responsibility to our own personal evolution. And I think that's what we're all about. That's the key to whatever's happening to us. How much can we learn? How much can we more fully integrate with what's deep inside us? And how, as Jung talked about, the idea of individuation was his idea, that we can become more whole by understanding what's not always at the surface levels of our personality. So how can we dig into these things? How can we take what happens that seems difficult as a gift, as a way to transcend? And I bring all these things up because the likelihood this weekend is that there will be a certain amount of stirring of the pot, stirring of the kettle, where things will come to the surface that we might not fully desire or expect. And what do you do with that? You know, do you go under? Do you say, oh, this is terrible, and I'm going to hide under my bed for the rest of the day or the rest of the week? Or do you kind of try to face up to it and see what you can actually make from it as a positive thing? And in this regard, we also need to talk about the presence of Pluto. Pluto is at 26 degrees right now of Capricorn. Pluto is stationing this coming month of April on the 27th, and will stay at this 26 degree mark of Capricorn, where it will station at 2648. So basically, stationary in the sky, more powerful, still squared, as you can see, by Eris. And even though Eris is a few degrees off of that, about 3 degrees, less than 3 degrees separates the square. It's still intense square. Also, we have Haumea at 28 degrees, which is again a couple of degrees off. So both of these are a couple of degrees off. What if we look at the midpoint? So in the TimePassages software, we can explore these midpoints by going to display reports, midpoints. And when we do that and bring them up, we can see we're going to have to look for the midpoint between Eris and Maki. This is Haumea, rather. The midpoint of Eris and Haumea, of course, is listed as Eris is this first planet in that. So it's down here. Here's Eris. Eris with Maki Maki, Eris with Haumea. So Eris with Haumea, well, 26 degrees. So the fact that this midpoint is 26 degrees, again, that's a partile square, or actually conjunction. The midpoint is a conjunction to the position of Pluto. So I think that's important to recognize, that we do have these new planets coming in, and what do they have to say to us? You know, Eris is all about claiming your authentic self, your truest, deepest principles, acting upon those, nothing but those. Haumea does refer to another part of our deep inner core, which our deep inner consciousness, which has to do with connection to nature primarily, but also that broadens into an understanding that there is such a thing as natural law, there is such a thing as right relationship, right action. We can't do as much as we would like to sometimes, just any old thing. We have to do something that's consistent with, you might say, faith in a higher power. The universe is a higher power. Faith in ourselves to do the right thing, to be in concert with what's actually happening between people and the society, where the society is going. We have the example of recent shootings. Obviously, that's a violation of this kind of natural law. This is taking somebody's life is not your prerogative, even though you may have anger, even though you might feel like you have to act out. You have to restrain yourself based on understanding these deeper principles. So that's what Haumea, in opposition to Eris, is about: taking action that you feel is necessary for yourself, taking action that you feel you need to, that this is your deepest principle being expressed. You have to take a stand in some cases. You have to take action. You have to quit that job, maybe. You have to speak to that supervisor or something. But you do it in a way that is consistent with natural law, not acting out in a violent way, which actually works against you, doesn't it? I mean, if you want to make something happen, you have to do it in a certain way that makes sense, that empowers you, that doesn't put you in a bad position because now you're yelling. You know, you've just lost it. You've just lost the battle right there, as if you react with anger. And if you're acting out, whether it's by a blow or worse than that, or a violent action, or if it's just even a violent words, you're acting out. And so the way to do it is to be firm in yourself, be confident in yourself, which makes it easier to be calm and just say, this is how it is, this is my principle. So that's the right action component of that opposition with Eris and Haumea, which is so key because it is in a T-square with Pluto, and Pluto's powerful right now, has been all this past year. And it is about our own personal transformation. It's about what we need to do to get to the next level, to the next stage of our personal evolution. So that's what we're basically in the midst of. And I would like to show you as well how these configurations interact with the USA chart. I'm not going to talk very long today, but in the USA chart, it's interesting to see these transits. So here we have the transits for 3 p.m. on the East Coast, Eastern Daylight Time. So the transits to the US chart. And the US chart is, of course, for July 4th, 1776, representing the birth of the nation, the first independent action, just like the birth time of an individual when they take their first breath is independent of the body of the mother. And that's the first moment, the first independent moment of this entity as an individual. Same for the United States. So we can look at this chart. It's been slightly rectified from 5 p.m. or 5:10 p.m. to 5:13:55 by Dan Rujar. I like to use this chart. He was very fond of it, and he talked about it quite a bit. And there is something to say in the fact that this position of the sun and moon at 8 degrees really does hit the US chart because of the position of Eris at the time of the birth of the USA was 8 degrees of Capricorn. See, here's Eris at 8 degrees of Capricorn. Here's Uranus at 8 degrees of Gemini, which is an aspect, an inconjunct aspect. And then there is also the 8-degree Uranus and the 8 degree of the full moon. So I think this is kind of a special time right now, this weekend, for the body politic of the United States. I mean, we know that this Chiron Venus position that emphasized by the full moon is in the 4th house of the US chart. Chiron has been transiting in the 4th house of the US chart for quite a while. I think it means that there is kind of an angst going on, a deep-seated angst in this country. And what's that about? Well, of course, we have the pandemic. We have the divisions between right-wing and left-wing progressives. They're so deep, the deepest divisions we've ever had, maybe. And that's painful. I mean, we can't really trust that everybody's on the same page. We can't really trust that everybody's working together to solve the problems, to make sure that we're safe in the pandemic. We can't really feel safe because of the pandemic, and also because we don't really trust each other at this time in this country. So it's a very difficult time in the United States, I believe. And I do think it's important to recognize that there could be some kind of both, with Uranus coming in, semi-sextile between transiting Uranus and Uranus in the US, emphasized by this full moon also at 8 degrees. I think there could be kind of surprises. There could be new thoughts, new realizations as far as what solutions might be. We know that things are moving. We know that there's a progressive administration now, and they have reversed some of the things that were the bane of progressives in the previous administration, and they have taken on the problems, including vaccination issues and the pandemic issues, and including, of course, the immigration issues on the southern border, is a situation that's been not completely handled for decades, really, but now is particularly a difficult problem. And that's a painful situation too, because turning people away that need help is difficult, but there has to be a boundary. So, I mean, that's a very complicated situation, including the childhood separations from their parents, which have to be restored, and trying to help people, help these young people, these young children, with perhaps relatives that are already here. It's a really complicated situation, including a lot of crowding, overcrowding in those facilities. So I think that's another thing that's painful, and maybe we'll see perhaps breakthrough or perhaps surprise events that are further. I mean, we've already had surprise events in this country, have we not? In the fact of these two mass shootings, and of course the mass shootings have been going on for a long time. There was the high school, the Stoneham Douglas High School, I believe it is, in Florida. It started a big movement to try to do gun control, and that's still going on, that battle. of whether or not to restrict gun purchases is still going on. This is a country that's unique in that regard. So I don't know if it means that there will be further actions this weekend, further surprise events. Let's hope not of a difficult kind. But there is a painful situation that we're all trying to resolve in how we relate to each other in this country in general, and how we relate to others on the border, other countries. Relationships with other countries is also emphasized at this time. So I think it's a significant time for all of us, and I think it's a significant time also in the environmental areas. With Makemake, it has to do with profound connection to nature, but it also has to do with natural activism. So there may be an activist component of this. What can we do? How can we help? Because Makemake is emphasized in this configuration. So I am looking, and it's right at the top of the chart as well in the US. So I am thinking this may be breakthroughs in environmental concerns. That's something that's being tried. It's a very difficult thing to change habits, and we have to because of climate change, which is an invisible situation. You have to trust science. So it's a very complex situation. I just say that we should be aware and alert to look for what's up with us and look at the deepest level of it, that how is that really manifesting our basic humanity? How can we improve our understanding of ourselves and of each other and try to make peace within the political situation, the social situation of this country? And it's just a weekend to be alert, to be watching for what goes down, how we all react to it, how we can improve the situation, how we can make peace with each other, with the different factions within this country, and with the huge problems of this country, including the immigration issue, but of course including climate change, because we have to make a big shift, and there's no time left to fool around. It has to happen. Otherwise, we're going to have more and more extreme weather. We're going to have sea level rise. We're already going to have sea level rise. So it's a very tough time, and we have to react to it in the best possible way. We have to really try to stay above the flood and not go under the flood of emotions, the flood of events. See if we can just maintain our cool, and just if we have faith. That's the biggest thing, I believe. So let's switch back to this chart that we were looking at, the full moon chart. And yes, recognizing that, yes, Makemake is part of this configuration, being right where the moon is located, right where Chiron is located. The opposite Chiron has been for quite some time, emphasized by all these full moons that have taken place around the same degrees, 8 or 7. And Uranus is part of that too. So there is enlightenment around environmental issues that's happening right now. I just look to this weekend to be a possible shifting event. There more environmental news of some kind or another, more breakthrough is I'm always optimistic. I think that is a possibility, or at least more information, more ways we can try to imagine what a future society that doesn't depend so much on fossil fuel, doesn't depend at all on fossil fuel for energy, what that could look like, how we can get there. Those kind of things may be coming up this weekend as breakthroughs. So that's where we're at. And I just want to share these things with you. And remember that it's also about how we understand what we're into, what we're up to. That astrology actually does work is really a key factor in all of this. In other words, astrology provides a framework. We can learn some things. We can make some, get some ideas about what's happening. We can see things at a deeper level through the symbols of astrology. We can also just recognize that astrology does give us not only these tools to help us understand, but also can enable a fundamental shift in the way we see things, a fundamental shift in the way we see the whole evolution of this 21st century culture that is changing and has to change, evolving towards something hopefully a little more self-sustaining, a little more personally enriching. And that's what we need to keep our eye on the ball. So that's it for now. Hope you've enjoyed this Thanks for watching, and take care. Bye now.